I had a difficult time growing up. My dad and I had to fend for ourselves after my mother died when I was a little child. He accepted his job as a stern single father, imposing regulations on everything, including who I could hang out with and how I could spend my time. He would sternly warn me, "Denise, those kids will only bring trouble." Anytime he saw me hanging around with the local street racers, he would say, "It's not about your age, it's about making wise choices." And he would be very critical of my wish to dye my hair bright colors, comparing it to a traffic light. "They're just enjoying themselves, Dad. We're grown up now," I would argue, attempting to show my independence. But he was uncompromising, worried that I would deviate too much from the principles he believed in. At home, he was known for his rigid approach to life, which extended to his reputation in our small town as a man who preached about responsibility and diligence. Our disagreements were frequent and heated, often ending with me storming out to seek refuge at Aunt Martha's house. She was Dad's younger sister, living just a few blocks away, and was his total opposite, laid back and always welcoming with a warm smile. Why can't he just relax a bit? I'd vent the moment I collapsed onto her couch. Aunt Martha, handing me a soda, would reply with a gentle laugh, "Denise, your dad's just frightened. He lost her mom, and he's terrified of losing you too. He sees things in black and white, but I need some color in my life." I'd argue, craving freedom and self-expression. Martha would nod, acknowledging both my frustrations and his fears. "He might be overdoing it, but he's not entirely wrong. Give it some time, and you might see some merit in his worries." Despite her attempts to mediate, I felt stifled and couldn't wait to escape. As soon as I graduated high school, I seized my opportunity. My grades earned me a scholarship to college, where I finally lived on my terms. I dyed my hair purple, indulged in the nightlife, and even mixed with a crowd that shared my love for street racing. Still, I stayed committed to my studies, determined not to squander the opportunities that lay before me. College was a breath of fresh air, and after 5 years of diligent work, peppered with plenty of fun, I earned a degree in accounting and secured a job at a reputable firm in the city. My boss, Mr. Stephen, was strict but fair, a reminder of my dad's principles, but without personal judgments. It was during a casual work hangout that I met Tyler. His charm was immediate, and we connected over our shared passions for classic rock, gourmet food, and vintage films. "Ever seen Casablanca?" he asked, his eyes twinkling as he took a sip of his beer. "Are you kidding? Here's looking at you. Kid is my go-to toast," I replied, thrilled to find someone who appreciated my quirky tastes. Our connection was instant, and it felt like everything I had experienced had led me to this moment. Shortly after, Tyler, "It's just easier this way. I can keep track of our spending and savings. Plus, isn't this what a husband does?" he said, looking up with a smile that didn't seem to truly reflect warmth. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, thinking it might indeed be for the best. From that point on, Tyler took over. He dictated our weekend plans, our expenditures, and even small daily choices. Anytime I suggested something different, he would quickly dismiss it. "No, that's not a good idea," without any discussion. As months passed, I found myself receding into the background of my own life. My friends reached out less frequently, knowing I would likely decline their invitations. My vibrant, independent spirit was dimming, overshadowed by the confines of the life Tyler approved. Living near Tyler's parents initially seemed ideal, like having a family right next door. However, the reality proved challenging. His mother, Catherine, was outwardly sweet, but subtly controlling. His father, Harold, treated our home as an extension of his own, often overstepping boundaries. One particularly exhausting day, as I arrived home from work, Catherine called. "Denise, darling, have you started dinner yet? Tyler must be starving after his hard day," she said over the phone. "Actually, Catherine, I just got in. Dinner will be a bit late tonight," I replied, struggling to mask my irritation. Her tone instantly turned icy. "Well, I hope Tyler doesn't have to wait too long. A man needs his dinner on time, you know." Her comments were not just about dinner. Catherine firmly believed that Tyler deserved special treatment because his job was deemed more demanding, despite both of us working full-time. Her expectations for me included not only managing our household, but also helping around their house, often pushing cleaning tasks onto me as soon as I entered their home. This relentless pressure and skewed sense of fairness increasingly weighed on me, leaving me to ponder the stark contrast between the partnership I envisioned and the reality I was living. Harold, Tyler's father, was just as challenging. Every weekend, like clockwork, he would appear at our doorstep early Saturday morning, remote control in hand, ready to commandeer the living room. The television volume was always turned up so high that it made the windows rattle. Claiming his spot on the sofa, he would act as though he were royalty. "Denise, where's the beer? I thought you'd have stocked up for the weekend," he would bellow from his self-assigned throne. "It's in the fridge, Harold," I'd respond, doing my best to conceal my irritation as he muttered complaints about kids these days while scavenging through the fridge, leaving a trail of crumbs and empty bottles behind. Tyler never intervened or addressed my concerns, simply shrugging them off. It was utterly draining. Between my job, maintaining our home, and catering to the whims of my in-laws, I felt increasingly stretched thin, slowly losing my own time and sanity to their relentless demands. At work, the pressure mounted when my company decided to merge with a smaller firm whose accounting department was in disarray, a mess of inaccuracies and outdated systems. It was my responsibility to untangle this web, which meant longer hours and more stress. Coming home late became more frequent than not. One particularly exhausting evening, I arrived home to find Tyler lounging on the sofa, idly flipping through channels. The dinner table was barren. "Where's dinner?" "You know I get hungry after work," he complained, without even a glance my way. I dropped my bag, my patience wearing thin. "Tyler, you know what's been going on at work. You were here first. Why couldn't you have made something?" I asked, my voice rising in frustration. He laughed dismissively, a sound that echoed mockingly around the room. "Me? Cook dinner? That's women's work, Denise. I'm not about to start playing house husband," he said. A surge of anger rose within me. "We agreed before we got married there'd be no men's or women's jobs. We're supposed to be in this together," I retorted, my voice rising. Tyler's face darkened as he stood abruptly. "I don't have time for this nonsense," he snapped, grabbing his keys from the counter. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "Out, away from this," he threw over his shoulder as he left, disappearing for days without a call or text, leaving me alone to juggle my escalating workload and the crumbling facade of our marriage. When he finally returned, he acted as if nothing had happened, ignoring the palpable strain and tension between us. Around that same time, I received some uplifting news at work. My hard work had been recognized, and I was promoted with a significant salary increase. Elated, I shared the news with Tyler. "That's great, babe," he said, his smile quick and fleeting. Guess what? I'll quit my job in a week. No point in working now that you're making enough for both of us. I stared at him, stunned. Tyler, we need to discuss this together, I said. He shrugged, completely unconcerned. You're making plenty. I can finally relax a bit. The next day, I went to work early, weighed down by my thoughts. I stayed late, my mind not only occupied with numbers and files, but also with a growing resolve. When I finally returned home, Tyler was waiting, his expression sour. You're late again. Where's dinner? He started immediately. Taking a deep breath, my decision clear, I faced him. Tyler, we need to talk. This isn't working. He sneered, folding his arms. So, what's your point? Think you deserve a trophy for trying hard? No, I replied, calm despite the inner turmoil. I'm looking for a partner, someone who supports me, not one who diminishes me. For a brief moment, Tyler's eyes met mine. A flicker of understanding, perhaps, but it quickly disappeared. His jaw set stubbornly. If this is too much for you, maybe you shouldn't have accepted that promotion, he snapped, snatching his jacket and slamming the door as he left. 8 long months trickled by, months in which I felt imprisoned in an existence I hadn't envisioned. Tyler quit his job, filling his days with friends and late nights soaked in alcohol. Any attempt I made to confront him ended in fury, with him escaping to the comfort of his childhood home, where he was still babied. You're too tough on him, Denise. You should be lifting your husband, not tearing him down. His mother, Catherine, would berate me over the phone whenever he took refuge with them. I'm the one supporting everyone here, Catherine. What else do you expect? My voice would crack from the strain. It wasn't just Tyler relying on me. His parents were also leaning heavily on me, frequently asking for money for their endless needs. Catherine's usual response was to simply hang up, leaving me to stew in frustration. During these testing times, a call came that halted everything. Aunt Martha, her voice, tender but heavy, delivered the devastating news of my father's passing. Our last conversation had been an argument, trivial disputes that now seemed painfully insignificant. I hadn't had the chance to reconcile. Tyler, will you come to the funeral with me? I asked, my voice laden with hope for his support. No, I can't deal with funerals. You go, he dismissed, barely looking up from his show. So I attended alone. The funeral was a blur of old faces, everyone mourning the man who had single-handedly raised me. It wasn't until I was sitting in his lawyer's office that the full impact hit me. Dad had left everything to me, his home and a savings of $430,000. Tears flowed as I realized that despite our clashes, he had been preparing for my future, perhaps sensing I'd someday need an escape. That night, in the solitude of my childhood home, I pored over old photo albums, images of my younger, rebellious self, dressed in vibrant outfits and sporting bright smiles, reminded me of my dreams of freedom, long exchanged for what I thought was security. As the first light of dawn crept in, clarity arrived. It was time for a significant change. The inheritance wasn't just assets. It was a gateway to a new beginning, an opportunity to rediscover the bold young woman who once believed she could take on the world. I have to do this for myself and for the woman Dad knew I could become. I murmured into the dawn, stepping back into what was once our shared home. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Tyler and his parents awaited, their expressions a mix of curiosity and greed, as if ready to claim whatever came their way. So, Denise, what did the old man leave you? Tyler asked, his voice laced with a thinly veiled curiosity. I hesitated, gripping the documents tighter to my chest. Before I could answer, Tyler snatched the papers from my hands, his eyes quickly scanning the numbers. A triumphant grin took over his face. $430,000, he shouted, turning to his parents, who immediately began to buzz with excitement. His mother, Catherine, clapped her hands excitedly. "Oh, that will cover a lovely vacation for us all. How about France, or maybe a cruise?" she suggested gleefully. Harold was already nodding in agreement. "And we need new furniture. Something nice, something grand," he chimed in eagerly. Tyler, not wanting to be left behind in the planning, slammed his fist on the table. "It's settled then. I'm getting a new car. It's about time I rode in style," he declared. I stood stunned into silence for a moment as they carried on planning, as if I wasn't even in the room. Gathering my courage, I finally spoke up. "Listen up, all of you. This is my inheritance, not yours. I decide how it's spent, not you," I said, my voice firm, louder than I felt. Tyler whirled on me, his face twisted in anger. Once the door shut, a deep sense of relief washed over me. They were finally out of my life. Selling Dad's house was a bittersweet ordeal, like saying goodbye to a piece of my past. Handing over the keys was difficult, but it was a step towards something new. I used the proceeds to buy a quaint house close to work, my very own sanctuary, free from past entanglements. Back at the office, things were also looking up. Mr. Stephen called me into his office one sunny afternoon, his demeanor serious yet supportive. "Denise, your recent performance and leadership have really stood out," he started, the lines of sunlight framing him from the blinds. I listened, hopeful. "I'd like to offer you the position of deputy director." "You've truly earned it," he said, meeting my gaze with a firm, encouraging look. "Thank you, Mr. Stephen. I promise you won't regret this," I responded, a surge of pride and excitement bubbling within. It felt incredibly fulfilling to be recognized for my efforts and talents, rather than as just another resource. Meanwhile, Tyler and his parents faced dire consequences for their reckless financial decisions. Overwhelmed by debt from their unplanned extravagances and facing angry creditors, they were forced to sell their home, a stark contrast to the stability and promise my new life offered. But even that wasn't enough to cover their debts. The last update I received was that they were squeezed into a small rented apartment, each of them taking up whatever odd jobs they could find to scrape by. One evening, as I was settling down for the night, my phone lit up with Tyler's name. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a hint of concern, I answered the call. "Denise, listen. I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, his voice trembling. "I made a mistake, a big one. I want to make things right. Maybe we could start over?" I couldn't help but let out a laugh, not out of joy, but from sheer disbelief. "Start over, Tyler? Do you even hear yourself?" I know it sounds crazy, but I've changed, Denise," he insisted, his voice laden with desperation. "Modified? You don't call until you're out of options or cash, Tyler. Restarting is not necessary. You must be given a reality check." I snapped back, having run out of patience. I hung up after saying that. I knew then that I was really free, not just from Tyler, but also from the life I had been forced into, from the oppressive hold his family had on me. What Dad had been trying to teach me for all those years finally made sense to me. He understood the value of being independent and making difficult choices for your future. All I wanted was to acknowledge his correctness, have a moment of reconciliation with him, and let him know that his lessons had finally stuck.